Okay. I'm willing to bet you've never really thought about the stuff I'm about to tell you. And even though it may seem like a pretty straightforward class, I'm surprised by the amount of people that either misuse Recon or just don't use it to its full potential. So I do realize that I didn't ever really explain into depth like the specific countries. So I thought I would correct that starting now, because specifically the recon classes, although everyone may think that they are all the same, they are very much not the same. And it's kind of hard to explain how I know which one to use for different scenarios, because I go based off how each recon's bullet feels, and I know that's really weird to say. Every recon has a different feel for how heavy their bullets are, and what I mean by that is how accurate they are, B, the travel distance of each, the amount of damage each bullet does, and 4, how easy it is to adjust your lead distance on the fly. The most accurate one I would say, that one would be none other than Italy. And that's because with the Carcano, Italian bullets are relatively light. They travel pretty far. They don't do as much damage as, say, French recons, but they travel further. They're more accurate, and you get, look at that, you get a really nice scope. That's why I almost always choose Italian recon. Like, look how accurate that is. In contrast, a recon that I think has really heavy bullets would be Britain's recon. Britain's recon definitely has heavier bullets than Italy's, and they don't travel quite as far. However, they do more damage than the Italian recon bullets. I typically use Britain's recon in tight scenarios where I know I'm going to be up close with the enemy. For example, if I want to use a recon on, let's say, like a conquest map where I know I'm going to be right up in the enemy's face, that's why I will sometimes use Britain's recon. See? Like that, just close scenarios where it just does heavy amounts of damage. However, the scope for Britain is not that good. You don't really have a good gauge of how far to lead your shot, but I just have such a heightened sense of proper aim distance that it doesn't really matter for me. But for someone that may not have that type of a feeling, then it may be a bit more difficult to adjust to Britain's recon. Before Italy came out, France used to be the number one, like the no-brainer best recon, and that was because of its scope, which is very similar to Italy's scope. However, their bullets are slightly heavier, and so they'll do slightly more damage than Italy's recon. But they don't travel quite as far because they're not as light. They still travel pretty far, they're not as accurate as Italy's. And then Russia's. Kind of wish Russia had a better scope, because if Russia had a better scope, I would very comfortably say that Russia's recon is probably the best. However, I can't really give it to them because Russia's recon is actually really bad. It's a singular vertical line. In what world is this gonna help me aim? But yeah, hands down, my go-to recon is always Italy's, just because I get a good balance of accuracy, damage, and scope comfortability. Moving on to the next thing, probably my biggest pet peeve with a lot of recon users is that they don't know how to use flare properly. And I know that may seem a little dumb, because you're probably like, what? Flare's not that hard to use. How do you misuse flare? Lots of beginning recons either aim it too high or they aim it too low, meaning that they aim too high, they don't always get the maximum amount of people that they could within one flare spot, or when they aim too low, they just hit the ground like this. That there is a sweet spot between being too high, like this, that's way too high, and being too low, like that. And if you do that when there's tons of people in front of you, I'm going to promise you your flares are going to be getting lots and lots of people. Beginners are often very inconsistent with their flares just because of how they place them. One time in a battle, I literally spotted all 20 players on the enemy team with one flare because I placed it perfectly. And if you can keep it at a consistent 30-degree angle, I promise you're going to see much better results with your flare game. The only downside is that recons don't have that little bayonet at the end of their rifles. Instead, they have to use their spade. And that switch between primary and secondary comes with practice and repetition, but trust me, when you get the muscle memory, it'll be almost instantaneous, like this. See how quickly? Another thing I guess I could recommend for recons is, if you want, you don't have to. Me personally, I tend to not. There will be occasional people that will use the decoy head. There's nothing wrong with using decoy head. It's actually pretty useful. I just personally don't like to use it. I just find I don't use it very often, even when I have it equipped. I neglect it. Oh, I accidentally got a spot off of that one. I didn't mean to do that. Okay, this is probably the most important thing I'm gonna tell you guys as a recon player. Most of you have probably heard the term lead distance or just leading a shot. Some of you may or may have not heard of cushion, or at least the way I use it. Leading a shot and giving a shot cushion are two different things. Leading a shot looks like this is the horizontal compensation, either aiming in front to the left or in front to the right. Cushion is the compensation vertically, either aiming up above or down below. So the key to having good lead distance, I like to use a specific measurement that I found is pretty consistent, although it will change the further away or closer up an enemy is. Keep a small paperclip's distance in between your crosshair and the enemy's head. So paperclip's length is, I'd say, about this much. You take an actual small paperclip, put it up to your screen, make sure you can fit it in between the center of the crosshair and the enemy's head. That's what I say is good lead distance. Now, the further away you are, you might have to widen that gap, or the closer they are, you might have to close that gap a little bit. And again, that's something that will depend on each situation, how far or close you have to bring that distance. Now, cushioning. If I'm all the way down here, but out here, obviously I'm not going to be hitting my enemy. If I aim out here, you can see on the horizontal line how it's kind of lined up with his nose. Alright, that's a good way to know you're lined up with a good headshot. If you're all the way up here where the line's above his head, obviously you're not going to be hitting anything. Same thing down here. If the horizontal line is all the way below, you're going to be hitting a body shot instead of a headshot. Again, you want to have good horizontally, so where I'm out paperclip's length, with good cushioning, so I'm lined up with his head so that he'll run his head into my bullet. That, in my opinion, is a great way to be landing more headshots. Well, that's all I have for today. I hope you guys learned something from this, and make sure to drop a comment if you have any questions. Make sure to like and subscribe. Also, I'm interested in what you guys want to see me play or see me do on this channel, and I'll take some of those suggestions into consideration. Well, until next time, see ya.